because to me it doesn't really matter. But hey, I'd like to have you guys' opinion. And will it make me faster if I tuck my ears in on my hat? But I have never done that, so I'm not. But I noticed all these guys have these really fast cars tuck their ears in. Now, is there a gain can you get something from that?
All right, hey guys, welcome back. This is pretty fun, another special episode. I'm hanging out with my dad in his shop. Behind us you can see all the hot rods we have sitting here, and I'm on assignment this time. I'm picking up my Nova and hauling it back to my house to work on it. So I'm really happy, Dad. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. This is fun.
I'm glad to be here.
We've got a few notes of some things we were going to talk about, but we're just going to kind of free flow it. We're just going to kind of go with it, see how this goes. Last time we left off our video, we were going to talk about muscle cars a little bit, and I wanted to give that opportunity. And as a primer, I have this thought, because I saw a picture the other day on Instagram, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. People were commenting, and their comments were pretty funny to see, but the truth is in the picture, and it's a first generation Camaro. It's probably, I think it was a '68 Camaro. And you can see the front of the car, and it's old. It's an old, like from about the 70s or 80s, early 80s picture of a car at the drag races. And it's a tunnel ram car, got 2 4s on it, big block in there, real wild looking paint job on it. But it was a bracket racing car, and the dial-in was written on the windshield, in shoe polish, 1410. All right, so everybody had their comments about what was wrong with this car. And that must be wrong, and Photoshop or this or that, or why this car seems so slow. But I'm here to tell you that a car that turns 1410 in the quarter mile was no slouch. It wasn't then, and it still isn't now, even though they call it a V6 Mustang now,
Yeah, well.
But I'd love to hear your thoughts on something like that. Because the fact is, we're spoiled nowadays, right? Before you had to build something like this if you wanted to make big power. But my 2005 Yukon makes more horsepower than a big block Camaro ever did. Well, not all of them, but your stock, basic 325 horse Camaro did. Right. So anyway, you talk to us, since you were right in you were in it during the muscle car era, your teenage years and beyond, when this was big. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, you don't want to get us wrong here. We're not trying to close the door on saying that the first muscle cars were slow or anything, or it's all in perspective, and so we're not going to try to knock on 14-second ETs, but in this day and age with the big horsepower factory cars coming out, it's a lot easier to go fast. Anyway, we do plan to debunk a few myths here, though, about the back in the day, the muscle cars, how fast they were and all, and please forgive me for, it could be that fuel smell in here. I had this car running a while ago, and I think it's getting in my head. But anyway,
okay.
Back to the muscle car days and all, I've got a couple of stories that I want to touch on briefly. You know how that goes. But anyway, I did get to, I felt I was right in the heart of it, being in high school, 68, 67, 69, and then I graduated in 70, which gives away my age, of course. But anyway, of course, these glasses are probably going to give that away too. Recently, I had to start wearing them all the time. Anyway, we're going to go back to the 60s and 70s, muscle cars a little bit, and we're going to talk about some Chevelles, Roadrunners, the GTXs, Mustangs, Camaros, and then you could throw in some of the Tri-5 Chevys. So there were a few of those that were fairly fast.
Yeah, good. Let's do it, because I know that's an era that we can't even relate. You're talking about the $300 55 Chevy kind of days, and when these cars were, you know, these later ones you're talking about are roaming the street brand new, you know, factory big block cars, that kind of stuff. Tell us what you had going on, like, well, let's say like around your high school, growing up in Arizona.
Well, when I was in high school, of course, the senior class guys and stuff, most of them were driving some kind of old cars, but they didn't yet have the funds to fork out for any of these so-called supercars of the time. But there were a couple of friends of mine that were just you might say just out of high school that did get their hands on some brand new Chevelles and Camaros, and even they could afford to buy like a few year old, maybe it was just a 66, 67 GTO, and those were fairly fast cars at the time. We're talking a good friend of mine, his name was Sam. I used to tune his cars for him. He had a good job, so he could pay me a little bit. But anyway, he had a 67 GTO that I worked on quite a bit. 3 deuces, a 4-speed car, and it had the 411 rear, which made it a fairly quick car. He bought the car, of course, in Phoenix and brought it to our little town, and hands down, it was the fastest car around for a while.
Yeah.
Anyway, at the time, when he bought that 67, he bought it like in 69, 70, and of course, they were just coming out with some pretty fast Camaros, Chevelles, and so forth. Anyway, there was some Chevelles and Camaros that he actually raced, and he could beat them hands down. He had the gear, he had the engine, and of course I would he'd drop it off, and I would tune on it, of course, set the timing and so forth. I got to mess with the 3.2s some and make those work right. A new set of spark plugs would always do wonders for that old car, because he'd just, during the week, he'd just chug it around town and load everything up. There was another car of note in my past, I remember, belonged to a good friend who was a few years older than I. It was an old 54 Ford, a 312, 4-barrel, 3-speed on the floor car. And it was quick for what it was. Belonged to a good friend of mine, Dwight. Dwight knew cars, and when we were kids, he taught me a lot. And if I had any questions, I'd go to Dwight. I want to thank him for that. But he did have a pretty fast old 54 Ford. Anyway, and then there was, of course, the Tri-5 guys. The Hernandez boys had 56s and 57s, and which were okay. They ran okay. Of note, I can remember though, in fact, when my brother bought a brand new 69 Camaro, well, when we went to pick it up, this dealership was having a little incentive program to dump some of these 69 cars. Anyway, if you bought one, you could go out back and pick one of those junkers they had out back and take it home for free. Well, of course, I went up with my brother, and our dad went with us, and my brother bought this 69 Camaro, so they told us about the deal they had going, so we walked out back, and here we're looking at these junkers, and I picked out a 59 Pontiac station wagon, because it was going to be my car. Anyway, I filled that thing up with gas, and I drove it home, and it ran very well. Well, I did some work to it, and I got it to running pretty good. Finally, I got around to rebuilding the engine in it, and then, of course, the stories start, but I'll see if Joe has any questions or...
I'm kind of hung up still. You're talking about your friend Sam's car with the 411 gears. Was that, I mean, I've driven around in my car, my Nova, with 411 gears in it, and that's just ridiculous. You're not 55 miles an hour, and you're wearing your engine out going down the road.
Well, a lot of those good engines got wore out.
Okay.
You know, these guys they were pretty much hometown boys. They didn't get out on the highway that much, and maybe a trip into town, the nearest town 60 miles away, and of course they would make that trip with those kind of gears. But yeah, you're buzzing that engine pretty good.
Well, I remember taking, so I remember Steve's car, my oldest brother Steve, he had in high school, he had a 79, was it 79 Z28? 78 or 79, I can't remember, but they built the 350 for it and an automatic trans, but I remember, I don't know where you guys sourced that, but I remember that 12 bolt that had under it with 456 gears in it. I mean, that car was a burnout machine, you know, it was, it ran good and sounded good, but I remember he and I had to drive it into Prescott one time, and it's normally about an hour and 15-minute drive. It took us all morning to get there. I mean, we just, you know, we must have been going 50 miles an hour. I'm sure the speedo didn't work in that car, but man, that was, yeah, it's those low gears, they sound real good, but not so much for driving on the highway.
Well, when he finally got that car to the track, though, it got a little respect.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good running car. Yeah. So anyway, so talk to us more, Dad, about these.
Some of these guys were going out and buying the Chevelles, and a lot of those, like the Chevelles, were coming out with 373 Positraks, and there were some 410, 411 gear cars out there.
Yeah.
And I definitely remember we had a Chevelle in town that a fellow by the name of Clyde, may he rest in peace, bought a 69 SS 396 Chevelle, 4-speed car. I can still see that car. It was red and white, had a white vinyl top, but it was red. Anyway, it was a respectable car. Everybody, I think he was about the quickest thing around, and at the time, and so of course when I got my old Pontiac wagon really tuned up, I'd put some exhaust cutouts on it so I could just loosen up the bolt, drop one bolt out of each side, and open them flaps up, and I was ready to go. So, well, I had a cousin with me, so I did have a witness riding with me. His name was Hank, and we'd cruise, and we were in the wagon, and here's this Chevelle ripping around town, and of course it pulled over and was parked, and this friend of mine, Clyde, and he had another fellow with him. Anyway, they're sitting there with big grins on their face, you know, and so I rolled up in that wagon, and they kind of wondered what the heck's he want, and I asked him if he was ready to run, and they said yeah, and I said, well, you want to race? And they said, they'd look at my wagon. He said, in that? And I said, yeah, and of course they chuckled, and anyway, you know, it was something for me to even try to get a race with them, but I thought, hey, if I get these guys just right. Well, we did get on out of town and lined them up. Well, I guess he was pretty surprised. And when I topped the hill, and he was still back there somewhere burning tires, smoking tires, I rolled on over to the side of the road, and we're sitting there, and so they pulled up, and of course this guy was older than I was, and he wasn't very happy. But he pulled up next to me, and I forget what the remark was, but it did insinuate that us young guys might kind of get kicked around a little bit. Well, Anyway, I embarrassed him a little bit, and I felt pretty good about it. But of course, I know that he didn't want me to run around town bragging about it, so I didn't say too much. Just to my close friends, I did. But anyway, that was a good deal
Yeah, that sounded like a good running car. What did it have, a 389 in there?
there. Yeah, I was running a 389 with a Hydromatic, and I had her tuned pretty good. And that old car would launch, and it didn't spin a tire. It just go. And of course, all these other guys with their 4 speeds, and they were burning rubber. And so that takes me on to the next one. That was, by the way, an SS 396 car, and of course he had tube headers and all, and I suspect it was a 375 horse car. But finally, one day I caught this other Chevelle that was running around town. I kind of caught him off guard, and it was a 70 SS, but this was a 454 car, and it was an LS6 car. So a lot of you guys are going to know that this was a factory rated 450 horse 454 car, 4-speed. I think he was running a 373 gear because the car he could do a long burnout, but it was a posi car. Anyway, so once again, I had a cousin with me, and we were out, and we caught up with this guy, and so we got out of our cars, we were just talking back and forth, and I was kind of looking that Chevelle over, and it was pretty impressive. I mean, it was brand squeaky new, and but I kind of wanted to try it on, and so I said, hey, what do you think about racing this old station wagon? He looked at that thing, he just kind of shook his head, and you know, this guy, he acted like, I mean, it was just such a waste of time. He said, well, how much? How much to race? Of course, I didn't have any backing, but my cousin there, he was a little older than I. And since I wasn't a beer drinker, my cousin told the guy, he says, how about for a case of beer? Oh, that guy jumped right on that. He could already taste that beer. So we went down, we lined them up, and I'll tell you what, once again, this guy was smoking tires, and I just took off. And I was just waiting for all that horsepower to come storming by me. Well, it never did. And we rolled into town again. I pulled over at the usual pullover spot up there and shut it off. And when this guy rolled up next to us, I have never seen a man's face that turned so red in such short a time. This guy was he was embarrassed. And I would be too, running a car.
Yeah.
A car with that much horsepower. But anyway, well, long story short, my cousin got his case of beer. And my car did get a little respect. But anyway, we're off to debunking the myth of these muscle cars. And,
yeah. Yeah, let's spend kind of the end of our time here talking about that, the myth of the muscle car, because I think, like I said, we're spoiled now, and people my age think that, you know, anybody who picked up a Camaro or a Chevelle or something was going down to the track and making 11-second passes. I'd love to hear.
It wasn't happening. It wasn't happening. You know, I did a little research, and I got some pretty good information here, but I'll just run through it quickly. They went back and they recorded what some of these old muscle cars were turning back then.
Yeah.
And just for instance, in '64 when the GTO came out, 389 3-deuce car.
Yeah.
They were rated at 345 horsepower. They were turning a factory car that was clean, running on the track, quarter mile, was turning 14.8 seconds, 1480s at 99 miles per hour. Well, moving on to a 68 Dodge Charger, they could run 14 O's, 14.0 at 98 miles per hour, probably a little more gear in that one. That was with a 440, 375 horse 440.
Okay, yeah.
The Chargers were you know, they were pretty good. There were some 1380 ones, but with no surprise, those were the 426 Hemi cars. 1380s at 105. They did have some horsepower because that miles per hour will tell you that. But the 426 Hemi was rated at 425 horsepower. 68 Plymouth Roadrunners, 1440s at 96. And then you got into the Camaros. All I've got here is a 69 ZL1, which was, I believe, the aluminum 427 car, 4-speed. They were rated at 500 horsepower. At 500 horsepower, 427, they turned 13.16 miles per hour, or ET in the quarter, at 110 miles per hour. There again, pretty good horsepower to pull that kind of miles per hour.
Yeah.
Getting on to the Ford Mustangs, the big one, the Cobra Jet, 428 with a factory rating of 335 horsepower. Most people said that you could add another 100 horsepower to that, which I believe.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Mustangs turned 1390s at 103. The 70 Chevelle SS 454, 1370s at 103. That's the 450 horsepower version. The 396, 1340. 396, 375 horsepower. 1340s at 103. Anyway, that just kind of is a summary that I have on some of those supercars. And yes, they were fast for the times. We made a lot of our little small block Chevys running 1350s, anywhere from 1350s to 14Os.
Yeah.
Without any magic going on there.
Yeah. Well, even in the 48, my dad had built a 48 Chevy Coupe, and that that was a heavy car, 4,000-pound car. I'm guessing.
I think it was about 37.
Okay, it's a heavy car, but with a 400 in it, I remember you're running 1390s, 1380s. I don't know what
it would turn 14Os all day long, but I did get some 1390s out of it.
That's pretty impressive for a big old non-aerodynamic heavy car. But comparing it to these muscle car numbers, that's just, I don't know, I think that's good, and it puts things in perspective, because a lot of people, I think, kind of lose heart with a rig they build nowadays, and they go take it to the track and they turn a 14-second pass and they think, well, people can go pick up a brand new car, and go buy a car that can turn 11s, 10s, whatever. Well, sure, but not all of them, not every car you buy is going to buy has 700 horsepower under the hood, that a respectable car that feels fast on the street could turn 14s, because the fact is that's what a lot of these 13s or 14s, that's what a lot of those muscle cars
are. And for those guys building the street rod, taking it to the track or whatever, don't be discouraged. If it's a car you're driving every day, if it's a 14 flat, 1350, 14 old car, it's respectable. I mean, it's just a decent runner. You hear about all these 12-second passes and all, and yes, it happens. Joe's Nova right here, very capable, and it'll run that. But yes, he's done a little bit of engine work, and he's got plenty of cubic inches.
It's got a 454 in it, so it should be faster than it is. But whatever.
Well, once again, too, we're talking about elevation, and my experience in the past was, from what I got, most of the time we'd take our cars to Phoenix, and they would run at about, I think they would run at about anywhere from 1,600 feet, 1,400, 1,600, maybe 2,000 feet of elevation,
Yeah.
which wasn't bad at all. You take that same car over on the coast, race it at sea level, and you're going to pick up, I would say, 8/10 of a second, 8 to 9/10,
Wow.
almost a full second.
Wow.
Just from introducing a little more atmospheric pressure, and it makes those motors want to run better.
Yeah.
That's why you go ahead and you stick stuff like this on there. You dump about, well, I don't really want to say how many pounds of boost, but I did pay attention to it today when I fired it up, and anywhere from, to be conservative, 5 to 10 pounds of boost, and that'll wake them up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's absurd. That's what that is. But well, anyway, well, I think that's pretty good, Dad. I think it's a fun talk. I enjoy hearing the stories about your buddies, you know, and about the cars that you used to be able to hang out with and see around town and whatnot. Yeah, next time we'll have to tell more stories.
Well,
you know, some of those.
you know, I can touch on one quick last one here
Yeah.
too. Don't think that I was dominant with that old station wagon, because I did have a fella that moved into town, and he became one of my best buddies, by the way, that had a 59 Ford two-door car, and it had a 406 mechanical solid lifter camshaft, 4-speed car, and yeah, he could beat my wagon just any day. It was a pretty fast car.
Yeah, yeah. There's been lots of changes since then too in technology, and I'm not talking computer type stuff. I'm talking tires are better now. You know, you can get tires that hook up and bite. All these cars we're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, are all parallel leaf spring cars.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you can do amazing stuff with the 4-link now, or even with leaf springs and a little bit of shock tuning so that you're not just sitting there smoking tires. You can actually make them hook up and run. You know, there's been a lot of changes since
Well,
then.
just like you touched on, just the tire technology has gone so far. I can remember a lot of those 60, 69, 70 cars were coming out with the polyglass tires. And I think that tire was a hard tire, because I never saw any of them hook very well. And the guys that would really, really try to get them hot so they would stick, I remember watching those tires actually melt. And I don't think it helped to heat those tires up to make them run any better.
Well, anyway, we'll have to pick up next time some more stories and make some more stories, right? We're looking this summer. We're looking at doing a cruise. We're going to go to Bonneville. I don't know which one of these rigs will be there, but we'll go and do the cruise in, and just to go check it out. Not to race, but just to go and check out the car scene there and get a little road trip. It'll be fun. And your friend Dwight, is he still planning on coming?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, Dwight just about confirmed that yeah, he'll be there, and
Good.
he's got a really nice little, I think it's a 29 pickup Ford, and I kind of suspect he might bring that. I don't know, maybe something else. He's got several hot rods.
Yeah. That'd be good if he brings something up and go make the cruise at the casino the night before the
You know,
speed week.
that reminded me, talking about Dwight.
Yeah.
He's still an old hot rodder, a few years older than me, but he used to tell me the story about, well, he was one of those guys that would get this local young guy in town to paint his cars, and anyway, this fellow's name was Kenny Fletcher. There might still be some viewers that can remember that name, but it was kind of funny because this guy he'd let you do all the sanding on your car and all, and you had to provide the paint, which you could, most of the time you go down to where we all work, down at the mine, and you could high grade some leftover paint that they used to paint equipment with. So most of the cars in town were either white, yellow, or a safety blue. Anyway, Dwight and I were kidding about what old Kenny would charge to paint a car. Well, if you had it all prepped, sanded and everything, and showed up at his place, stuck it in his garage with a gallon of paint, he'd paint your car for $15. So when I was getting ready to paint this 32 here a year ago, I called Dwight up and I said, "Hey Dwight, is old Kenny still around? I kind of got a car that needs painted." At first, Dwight took me serious. He said, "You know, I don't even know if old Kenny's still alive." But anyway, old Kenny, he's one of those guys, he'd paint a car for $15.
Hey, we did a lot of that. I remember, you know, growing up, well, we painted my orange Nova in the driveway. I remember that was a big deal to go buy a gallon of real paint to do that. I remember Mike's truck we painted in the driveway too. That was pretty good. He had a 72 Chevy Love pickup. And this is when mini trucking was just starting out, you know, and everybody had their mini trucks and lowriders. So he got this Chevy Love, and I remember we lowered it down, and it looked good. But I remember that one day doing the paint job in the driveway on that thing. It came out pretty good.
That was a custom job now.
It was custom. It had it was white with blue scallops on the sides. That's pretty good. I'll have to see if Mike has a picture of that truck, or if I can find one, I'll put up. You guys can see it. That came out pretty good. But we did a few of those driveway paint jobs, and hey, that's what you did. It's just what you did, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, Dad, we've been on here long enough. I think we'll wrap it up.
It's been fun. I appreciate you having me, and I kind of enjoy reflecting.
Yeah, I do too. It's good to remember these stories. So, hey, I appreciate your guys' time. Click one of those videos that's going to pop up on the screen now. Check out more of the channel, and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can follow along, because we're going to be doing more of this, telling old stories and going out and making new memories. All right, thanks. All right, we'll wing it.